A left-handed soldier walks into a Roman formation, fully trained, strong, fast. He holds his gladius in his left hand, exactly as he would naturally. He is immediately a problem. Not because he fights poorly, because of something nobody ever talks about when they ask why left-handed swords don't exist. Something that has nothing to do with the blade at all. Before the 16th century, most sword production was military. You weren't making weapons for individuals. You were equipping hundreds of soldiers at once, sometimes thousands. Standardization wasn't a preference, it was survival. Think about what a shield wall actually requires. The Greek phalanx worked because every shield overlapped its neighbor in a single direction. The man on your left depended on your shield covering his right side. The man on your right depended on the man beside him doing the same. That chain of overlapping protection stretched across the entire front line. Break it anywhere and the formation bleeds. One left-hander breaks it, not because he's weaker, because his natural fighting stance positions his shield on the wrong side of that chain. The man beside him is suddenly exposed. The formation doesn't accommodate that. The formation cannot accommodate that. You either hold your shield in the correct arm, or you become the weak point that the enemy targets. The same logic ran through Roman infantry doctrine. The scutum was carried on the left arm, the gladius in the right. That wasn't cultural habit. It was tactical geometry built into every drill, every formation, every coordinated advance the Roman military machine ever executed. The maniple system assumed right-handed fighters moving in sequence. A left-hander fighting naturally disrupted the spacing, the angles of attack, and the defensive coverage that made Roman infantry so brutally effective at close range. Medieval armies operated on the same principle. They didn't train soldiers as individuals, they trained units. Every surviving manual, Hans Talhofer, Fiore dei Liberi, George Silver, assumes a right-handed practitioner. Not because left-handers were excluded from service or considered lesser fighters, but because synchronized drill is impossible when half your unit mirrors the other half. When 10,000 men train the same guards, the same cuts, the same footwork for months, one soldier does not receive a mirrored curriculum. He learns the right-handed system, or he becomes the gap in the line that gets people killed. The Elizabethan military writer Sir John Smythe addressed this directly. He acknowledged that some soldiers genuinely preferred their left hand. His position was not that they were inferior fighters. His position was that they should only switch hands when formation order required it. That single concession tells you everything about how this system worked. Individual preference was always subordinate to unit cohesion. The weapon didn't change for the soldier changed for the formation. This is the first inversion. The absence of left-handed swords has nothing to do with swords. It has everything to do with what swords were actually for. That military logic completely collapses in one specific context: civilian dueling. In the 16th and 17th centuries, as rapier culture spread through Spain, Italy, and France, sword fighting transformed from a unit skill into an individual one. Dueling manuals multiplied. Masters opened schools across every major European city. For the first time in the history of the sword, the weapon was being optimized around a single person fighting a single opponent. No formation, no unit cohesion, just two men in a street or a field. And left-handers suddenly became genuinely dangerous. Every duelist trained against right-handed opponents. Your entire game, your footwork, your measure, your timing, your instinctive parry responses was calibrated to a right-handed attack. That calibration took years to build. A left-hander invalidated it immediately. The attack lines came from the wrong side. Your parries went to the wrong place. The distance that kept you safe against a right-hander put you directly inside a left-hander's strongest striking angle. Italian fencing literature of this period acknowledged the problem explicitly. Left-handed opponents were a recognized tactical threat. Some masters recommended deliberately practicing against mirrored partners, or training both sides of the body, specifically to neutralize the advantage a left-hander carried simply by being uncommon. This is exactly where you would expect a left-handed sword market to emerge. Individual weapons, high craft, wealthy noblemen commissioning exactly what they needed. And it did, partially. But the story is more complicated than a simple yes. Swept-hilt rapiers were built as right-handed weapons by design. The bars, rings, and knuckle bows were arranged specifically to protect the right hand. They are asymmetrical and cannot simply be rotated into the left hand without losing that protection entirely. However, the Spanish and Italian cup-hilt rapier was a completely different case. The cup, a solid bowl guard, was functionally symmetrical. It protected whichever hand gripped it equally. The Scottish basket-hilt broadsword was the same. The cage enclosed the hand regardless of which hand that was. For wealthy left-handed duelists who wanted bespoke asymmetrical work, mirrored swept-hilt rapiers were occasionally commissioned. They exist in museum collections today. They are rare, but they are real. That rarity is the most revealing data point in this entire story. Demand existed. Wealthy clients existed. Master craftsmen existed who could produce anything a paying patron requested, and the result was a handful of surviving examples rather than an industry. The dueling market was already partially solving the problem through design evolution towards symmetry, and more importantly, even a nobleman who could afford a custom left-handed sword could not buy a left-handed fencing school. The entire infrastructure of codified technique, standardized guards, written manuals, lineages of instruction assumed right-handed practitioners. The sword was the easy part. The system around the sword was immovable. If you're watching this and realizing the question was never actually about handedness, subscribe now. This is what this channel does. The katana appears to destroy this entire argument. Differential hardening. A harder cutting edge, a softer, flexible spine. The edge is always on one side. This is not a design choice that can be rotated. Flip the blade and you are cutting with the spine, which cannot hold an edge and will fracture under the stress of a real cut. This is a physically handed weapon at the level of metallurgy itself. A left-hander cannot simply reverse it and fight normally. And yet no parallel tradition of left-handed katana production ever developed across the entire history of Japanese swordsmanship. The reason is structural rather than physical. Japanese swordsmanship was built on kata, pre-choreographed sequences drilled into muscle memory through thousands of repetitions across years of daily practice. The draw from the left hip, the two-handed grip with the right hand leading, the cut, the return stroke. Every element was designed around a right hand lead from the ground up. The kata did not simply prefer right-handed practitioners. It was constructed exclusively around them. Traditional Japanese sword schools were completely unambiguous on this point. Left-handed students learned the right-handed system, or they did not learn at all. The physical handedness of the weapon and the procedural handedness of the system locked together into something that left no room for variation. There was no left-handed kata lineage because there was no master to originate it, no school to teach it, and no tradition to carry it forward. The system didn't just discourage deviation, it structurally prevented it from ever accumulating enough momentum to become an alternative. The standard answer to this question, when people bother to ask it at all, is that left-handed swords don't exist because most swords are symmetrical and handedness simply doesn't matter. That answer is half right and entirely wrong at the same time. Yes, many sword blades work in either hand. That is true and beside the point. The reason left-handed sword variants were never produced at scale has nothing to do with the blade. It has everything to do with the system surrounding the blade. The formation, the drill, the kata, the school, the manual written by a master who assumed every student gripped right. The entire infrastructure of organized violence, across every culture that developed it seriously, was built around the statistical majority and optimized for unit cohesion over individual accommodation. A sword is not a standalone object. It is the physical component of a fighting system, and fighting systems could not afford to care about 10% of the population when the other 90% needed to move, cut, and defend as a single coordinated body. The only crack in that wall was civilian dueling, where individual variation became a tactical asset rather than a liability. And even there, the solution was partial. Ambidextrous hilt designs, a small custom market for the wealthy, not a parallel industry. You thought the question was about what left-handers could hold. It was never about that. It was about what systems could accommodate. And the answer, across almost every fighting tradition in human history, was the same. They could not.